Hello and welcome to another edition of Sports Talk Philadelphia here on LaSalle TV. I'm your host, Josh Abrams. It is all Phillies today as opening day is just around the corner. We're going to talk about all Phillies all show. Stay tuned.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You'll never have the sacred stone.
Oh, this you crazy mother.
We are here to talk Phillies today. Sam Brown, Gia Lancey, and Tegan Lamont join us for the show today. But first, before we get to that, we're going to do our headlines part of the show. And the first headline that we're going to talk about today is our Philadelphia 76ers finally clinching that all-inclusive playoff spot. It came in arguably the biggest game of the season up until last night. On Sunday, the 76ers went into Milwaukee and beat the top-seeded Milwaukee Bucks, best team in the East and in the NBA. And then on Wednesday, we come back home after beating the Hornets without Joel Embiid. He comes back, puts up 37 and 22. We beat the Celtics finally for once this season. So just real quick, guys, it seems like the feeling has been the same coming into each show about the Sixers. We've been struggling to we were in fourth place for a while, and we finally get into third. But now we actually have a playoff spot, and it looks like the third seed's ours. So we have to be feeling good, right?
Absolutely. There's nothing that could possibly lower their confidence at this point going into the playoffs, except maybe some kind of a late season collapse. But other than that, the way they played last night is just the way they got to continue to play through the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that they've been playing really well as a whole, and obviously matured throughout the season. But I'm still a little nervous to see who they're going to play in playoffs. You know, I mean, just because one win over the Celtics doesn't mean that it's totally set. So.
Yeah, and beating Boston and getting out of that 4-5 matchup with them in the first round is a big step for them. Trying to avoid them until the conference finals would be super nice. Just because it's a team that we've struggled with all year. We struggled with them last year. We lost them in the playoffs last year. Avoiding them until a conference final and being able to build some confidence in a playoff would be a good thing for the team.
So obviously, as I said, this team clinched a playoff spot. But if the playoffs were to start today, we would play, I believe, the Detroit Pistons, who we really haven't had that much trouble with this season. What's the limit for this team, if any at all, for this playoffs?
I mean, I think it's going to be tough for them to. I mean, they're still a young team. They're still an inexperienced team. But winning a round or two of the playoffs is enough for them, I think, this year. I don't think that the expectation is to win a championship. You still have to deal with the Warriors in the West. You still have to deal with the Rockets. You have to deal with the Bucks this year, who are playing extremely well. I don't think a championship is what fans should have as their expectation this year. But I think maybe making a conference final or making a final is a reasonable expectation.
What do you guys think?
Getting past that second round is the most important playoff goal. Like Tegan said, so, you know, blowing through the Detroit Pistons would not be too tall of a task to complete. It's just who they have to play in the second round that should be not the most. I don't want to say the most intimidating factor, but the most challenging.
Gia, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I have high expectations, and I think you're wrong. I think all of Philadelphia sports fans have really high expectations. They want them to win everything every single year. But I will be satisfied with second rounds in the playoffs. And, you know, I just enjoy watching good basketball, and I want them to play the Celtics again because that was a freaking awesome game. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right that Philly fans do have these high expectations, and they expect them to win everything every year. But, I mean, realistically, you're not taking down those teams in the West, really. Those teams in the West are going to fight it out, and whoever wins that's going to be the NBA champion.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out because we only have 10 games left on the season. There's still a lot of basketball left to be played. Before we move on, the last headline we're going to quickly discuss is Mike Trout. I don't even know. I'm still speechless at how much money this guy's making. He is, I think if you break it down to the smallest degree, he's making $89 grand per at bat and probably like $2 a minute. You know, it's like, it's absolutely insane. But he deserves it. He's you know, people are putting him in the Hall of Fame already. What was your guys' initial reaction when Mike Trout signed this deal?
I'm sad. Sorry. I am very sad about it. But, I mean, it's kind of like I was like teetering about it because I think that he wants to be here, but I also am not sure. I mean, and like it's crazy. Like they only have one postseason win with him. But I mean, he is literally the best right now, and he does deserve it, but it's a little confusing. And I want him here, obviously, but that's not going to happen. So.
What about you, Sam?
I mean, this doesn't come as a surprise at all. Whether he signs in this offseason, his extension, or whether he tests free agency in 2 years, he was going to get paid, and he was going to get paid big. And it just so happened to be right now, right here and now. And I think the person who's most disappointed about this is Bryce Harper. I haven't recruited him, but it is for the best because that's why you sign him when he's still available.
Sure, yeah. Sorry, Tegan, we got to move on, but we're going to get to Phillies talk. The season's just around the corner now. It was a real disappointing end to the 2018 season. This team drastically improved in the offseason. However, we cannot have another collapse like this that we had in 2018. We can really start from anywhere, but what are your guys' just general thoughts on this 2019 season? And I'll leave the floor open to anyone who wants to start that.
Exit.
That's the second time.
I was just going to say, I mean, talking about expectations, my expectations are extremely high, and I think that that's allowed. I mean, this was probably the biggest offseason that I've at least seen in my lifetime, maybe. I don't know. But I have really high expectations. I don't know about you guys, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think the expectation is to play the way they played before the All-Star break, maybe better last year, and not have that collapse at the end of the year. They added a lot of leadership, a lot of quality players in Harper and McCutchen and even David Robertson in the bullpen. I think that one spot that they're still missing is a pitcher that can come in and shore up the end of a rotation. I think we see a strong ace than a few young guys that who knows what they're going to do. And if they do well, we could have a really successful year. But we don't have much outside of Nola that we really know what we're going to get from it.
And it all comes down to these expectations that everyone has, not just people here, but in sports media everywhere. After this offseason, this very good offseason that they've had, it's completely, there's no excuse for having a collapse or not making the playoffs this year after what they had done, after all the work that they had put into building the team that they have. Like Tegan said, they still have some steps to take to improve the team to the best it can be with the pitching. But other than that, this team's going to be great this year.
Yeah, and it's certainly clear at this point in time that this Phillies team, despite how great of an offseason you guys have mentioned that they had, they're still a few steps away from becoming a championship contending team. And we're going to start, I guess, in the position area. So, catcher, first base, infield, outfield, all of that fun stuff. We improved drastically at catcher. We were able to move Hoskins back to first with Carlos Santana leaving. Some of the infield positions are still up in the air, and I guess the first thing we'll talk about is the second base position. We've had Cesar Hernandez man that spot for the last 6 or 7 years now, but we may or may not see him play for the first half of the season and then get traded. There's been a lot of talks about him leaving. Scott Kingery has also been in the talks of filling in that void at second base, but he also can't really hit the ball consistently yet because he's still young. So, from that perspective, what do you think is going to happen with that situation?
I think Cesar should be the one to be starting at least. If he starts to struggle and he needs time off, then you give it to Scott Kingery. But I don't give Scott Kingery that starting job just because of his really slow start last year after signing a 6-year extension and not having played a game at that point. I don't think he's ready for opening day just quite yet. Yeah,
I mean, I think Cesar is the obvious start. I think he's going to be your leadoff batter in all likelihood. If he's not, he's going to be somewhere in the heart of an order. He's a big difference maker in terms of getting on base and setting a tone for an offense. But I think Kingery in the long run is what they hope will be their starter at second base or at third base even. I think they are willing to, and Kingery is willing to play either one to get the playing time that he wants and probably needs to grow into the player that they want him to be. But I think Cesar right now is the more proven guy, is the guy that's more suited to help this team get off to the right foot or get off on the right start and start a season that they can hope to win a division title.
Gia, do you have any thoughts on Kingery or
Yeah,
Hernandez?
I mean, other than Scott Kingery is just really inconsistent. And I mean, I think Hernandez is probably one of our weakest links, which is not anything bad, you know? So I think going off of that, I'm excited to see what's going to happen with that position.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Tegan, about, Hernandez potentially leading off because we send in our lineup predictions, right?
Right.
And I think a lot of us are pretty. I think it's confirmed at this point that Andrew McCutcheon's going to be leading off. But I do see Cesar has been leading off for a while, so I understand where you're coming from.
I also could see it being, I know Kapler has mentioned in press conferences that he's still going to do the matchup type thing where he's not going to take guys out of the lineup as much as he did last season, but he's still going to shift the order maybe a little bit. And I could see a scenario where a lot of times when there's a lefty on the mound, McCutcheon's leading off, but a righty that maybe McCutcheon has less of an advantage against than Cesar who switch hits. Maybe Cesar leads off and tries to get on base and tries to start something up for that heart of the order, which should be extremely formidable.
Now, one of the other points I wanted to talk about with this position player aspect of it is Michael Franco at third base. I would like to think that this is probably the last straw for this guy. I mean, he's been with the organization since 2015. That's at least when he made his major league debut. But I mean, he pulls the ball too much. It's very, very rare that you're going to see him hit a ball opposite field, and that's very nitpicky. It's materialistic, but he's been with the organization for so long now. This has to be the last. This has to be the last time around for him.
I saw him at spring training, and he honestly didn't even really look like he wanted to be there, like anything part of the team. So maybe he just needs something to switch it up, And I think a new face at that position wouldn't hurt.
What was it that was there anything significant that
he
made
really
him...
didn't even conversate with any of the other players, and I mean I know that they weren't. This wasn't. This was before Bryce Harper was there, so it was, backup players and stuff. But still,
Right.
I mean, he just didn't even look pleasant.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been a big Franco fan. I think he had a lot of potential in him, and I still think he's a 20-plus home run guy every year. And he's got a good arm at third base, but his glove's not anything spectacular. But I think he's a guy that can give you a few games where he's really, really hot, and then take away quite a bit, and he'll go stretches where he doesn't hit anything and has no power in the bat. And I think it may be a little bit of what you said. It's the motivation, it's the maturity that he doesn't have. He doesn't put everything out there all the time for the whole year.
What do you think, Sam?
Like Tegan said earlier about maybe Scott Kingery or Cesar playing third base, I think when you said this is the last straw, I have to agree with that because he's on very thin ice with this team with his off-the-field antics too. This team needs to put their foot down with him and tell him, dude, your job is on the line. Right. I really need you to step it up, or we're going to give the second-year player who hit 226 last year your job. So if that's not a kick in the pants for him to play better this year, or to at least discipline himself this year, then I don't know what is. And if this keeps up, he will not be here much longer.
And I'd like to think it's the same thing with Odubel Herrera, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think Nick Williams could easily step in. Nick Williams came up playing center field. If Nick Williams has another good year off the bench like he did last year, he was phenomenal for us off the bench. If he starts hot and Odubel does his streaky up and down thing that he always does, I could see Nick Williams taking that center field spot, or Roman Quinn when he comes back from injury. He's probably not going to start the season healthy, but when he's back and ready to play every day, one of those two guys could easily take that spot from Odubel.
Yeah, and I really wouldn't mind seeing Nick Williams take that spot, mainly because he is really athletic. He's young, and it seems like it seems to me that he has a little bit more potential than Odubel does. Mm-hmm. And I think Odubel's done. Can you say he's done a lot? Not really. Yeah. He had an all-star year. He started off really hot last year and then fell off. So this is also the last straw for him as well. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the pitching aspect of it. So stay tuned. Welcome back. The same crew is with me to talk about the pitching aspect of the Phillies, and it is very clear that this part of the team needs to improve compared to the offensive side, because right now, considerably speaking, we really only have one ace on the mound, and everyone knows it's Aaron Nola, top 3 Cy Young Award finalist last year for all good reasons. It's really clear that this team needs to get somebody else, right? I mean, we've kind of addressed that in the offseason a little bit, but we never really made any moves after we made the big splash with Bryce Harper. So I guess I'll start by asking, is there any pitcher out there that you guys want to see, maybe by midseason, join this rotation?
I mean, I'd like to see Dallas Keuchel in a Phillies uniform. He's a lefty starter. He's a former Cy Young winner and a World Series champion who really has solid stuff. The only issue with him is that he wants an extra year on that contract that the Phillies aren't willing to give to him. So one side has to cave. And I think at this point, despite what the Phillies had done, they're on the shorter end of the negotiating stick. So it might have to be them. And this team's only built to win short term because they only have 2 years of the catcher that they just traded for.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the hugest fan of Dallas Keuchel, but he's way better than throwing out Jared Eichhoff, who nobody knows what he's going to do, and Enyel De Los Santos and Ranger Suarez are those guys that just are not proven to be anything, and who knows what kind of production you'd get out of them. But, I mean, I think Dallas Keuchel is the only name that's out there still that would contribute anything really to the team. I mean, I would have loved to see us get in on Gio Gonzalez before the Yankees picked him up. He signed a minor league deal with the Yankees, which is just ridiculous to me that we weren't even considering doing that, because Gio Gonzalez is a guy that's been a quality starting pitcher for a decade now. So I don't understand why we didn't look into picking him up or why we didn't offer more than a minor league deal to him. But Dallas Keuchel as a lefty without a lefty in the rotation, really, I think he's the guy that would add the most to the team.
Sure. And I guess another big person that we need to talk about in this rotation is Jake Arrieta, because we knew that coming into last season that he was about one of 2 veterans on the entire team. And obviously this team is a lot older compared to last year, but Jake Arrieta really fell off as it's not like as the Phillies go, he goes. But it did kind of seem like that when he fell off last year, because as he collapsed in the second half, the Phillies essentially did so too. Do you guys have any faith in the 34-year-old this year?
I'd like to, but you have to question how committed he is to improving the team and improving his own play. In last year, when he blamed Scott Kingery for losing a game late in either in the 9th inning or extra innings, that's nothing you can have on your team. There needs to be self-accountability. And if Jake Arrieta's pitching performance is on the decline, and there goes his professionalism too, then he's not someone that I would like to have in this clubhouse. And it's good that he's only signed short term.
Yeah, I mean, when he signed the deal, I wasn't thrilled about that either. I mean, Jake Arrieta and Dallas Keuchel are kind of the same guy to me. One throws right-handed, one throws left-handed, though. I mean, they both had a good year, and they won a Cy Young. But then other than that, their careers have been pretty up and down. And, I mean, Jake Arrieta here with the Phillies has been pretty much just down. He hasn't really pitched that well for us for any considerable stretch of time. I mean, he's just a guy that probably is a number 3 or 4 starter in a rotation right now. But he's our number 2. That's kind of where we stand.
Yeah, I mean, I think last season, I think he was just average, but definitely the leadership aspect is a big thing on this team, and I think that needs to be the thing that he changes. But also I saw reports that he was doing really well over spring training, so I'm hopeful that that's true.
Yeah, and I mean, we really will need his arm to provide some slack for the rest of the rotation, which leads us into this rotation. It's kind of up and down. When we sent in our predictions for the rotation, we knew it was going to be for the most part Nola, Arrieta, and then it's pretty much fair game from there. Now, personally, I would like to see Nick Pivetta get that 3rd spot. I think he showed potential last year, but I think injuries and a couple bad outings just really messed with his confidence. He's got an arm on him, and I think he's really going to have an effect on this rotation as being a solid dark horse at that third spot. But is there any other pitchers out there? We got a lot of guys that have been with the organization for a couple years now, and we still don't know what their deal is.
Well, if you saw the graphic, I had 6 pitchers in my rotation, and I have Jared Eichhoff and Vincent Velasquez at the bottom. I'd like to see the 2 of them duke it out for that last spot, just because it's really up for grabs at this point. Neither pitcher has shown consistency in their career, and whoever comes out to the faster start, alternating in the first however many weeks of the season, should keep that spot from there on out.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a big throw Vince in the bullpen kind of guy, but I also don't. I mean, you guys have both had Eflin in your rotation, and I don't have a big Zach Eflin fan thing. I don't think he's a great pitcher. I don't think he's really going to give anything to the team. Velasquez at least can be dominant. I mean, we've seen him, I think, one start maybe in his career actually be dominant, but like Zach Eflin is a fly ball pitcher in Citizens Bank Park, which I don't like. Vince Velasquez is a power pitcher who throws hard, and I mean, like Pivetta, he throws hard and has that ability to be dominant. I think Pivetta probably has more potential at this point, but until you get a guy like Keuchel in who can take over that Eichhoff or Velasquez spot, the bottom end of that rotation just isn't going to be proven, and there's going to be guys that are up and down.
Yeah.
Velasquez is almost always throwing 60 pitches by the 4th inning, and that's not something you can have from your starters.
Yeah, that really is an issue. But I guess another issue, there's still issues with this team. Like, let's not get anything confused here. This team, especially on the pitching side, as I keep on referring back to, just is not ready. And now we did go out and sign Dave Robertson, as you alluded to earlier. We did improve the bullpen a little bit with that. We still have Pat Neshek. Sir Anthony Dominguez is still around, which is always a good thing because of how hard he throws, but even he fell off a little bit too. Every player is going to fall off, which is a given. But this bullpen is certainly, I mean, we're sitting here criticizing the starting rotation. We need to do that more for the bullpen.
Yeah. I think the back end of that bullpen is an excellent back half. There's nobody to bridge the gap between a starter and a bullpen, though. I mean, throwing Neshek, Sir Anthony, and Robertson out there as a 7, 8, 9 inning kind of combination is fine. That's a good back half of a bullpen. They'll get you through and probably make you a playoff team. But having a guy to get you from the 5th inning where Velasquez is going to end up out of the game anyway, having a 6th inning guy that can bridge that gap is what we don't have. Who are we going to trust? Hector Neris, Yaxel Rios,
Or Tommy Hunter.
Yeah, I mean, it's just. Yeah, there's not a lot of guys that you have a lot of confidence in, and the lefties in the bullpen aren't great either.
What do you guys think?
I have to agree with Tegan on the bridging the gap aspect. Some of the pitchers that they had brought in via trade, like Juan Nicasio and James Pazos, you don't know what you're getting with them. I mean, Pazos has been in the league for only a few years now on good teams, so we don't know how he'll do on his own.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I'd like to think that this team has enough offensive power to be able to cancel all this out, but we'll see. We will see. So let's move on to the Fast Five segment, but instead we're actually going to go over our record predictions and our MVPs, and I will start. I have the Phillies going 93-69. It's a little bit of a stretch. It's the same record they had when they last went to the World Series. And my MVP is Aaron Nola, solely for the fact of what we just talked about. He is the lone ace in this organization. He was a top 3 Cy Young Award finalist last year. He just goes out there. He pitches. It's very rare for him to not pitch 7 innings. And I really think that at some point in time, maybe this year, next year, in the next couple of years, we are going to see a Cy Young Award be awarded to Aaron Nola, because he has really put this team on his back. He's the reason why we won a lot of those games last year, and I'd like to think that he's the MVP solely because of the fact that he's the lone ace in this rotation. Sam, we're going to come to you.
So I chose a record of 85-77 because the offense is going to go through stretches where it's not going to be the firepower that it looks on paper, and like we've been talking about the pitching rotation, it's not there completely, so they're going to lose. It's going to be a given that they're going to lose a handful of games every now and then and they're going to go through bad stretches too. So 85 and 77 seems like at least a wild card at this point.
Sure. All right, Gia, what about you?
Yeah, so I'm very hopeful. Mine is 162. So I'm a very positive person. Let's just think about that. I think that they're really similar to the Yankees last season, talent-wise, and I have really high expectations. This offseason was huge, you know, so I mean, obviously they are going to have their off days and stuff, but I really have high expectations, and I think it's a really talented team and that they can do a lot of good things. And obviously my MVP is Aaron Nola as well, and nothing else really to say.
Yeah, I mean, my MVP is also Nola. I mean, I think, like you said, I mean, he was a top 3 in the Cy Young last year, and he's projected to be a top 3 in the Cy Young again this year. I mean, if he gets by Scherzer and DeGrom somehow, he'll win the Cy Young, but with those 2 guys ahead of him, it's kind of tough. But he's the future of the franchise pitching-wise, and he's the guy that's going to be our ace for the foreseeable future.
And what was your record prediction?
My record was 88 and 74.
Okay.
Like Sam said, I think they're probably a wild card team, but
Well, if they're a wild card team, then who's winning the division? Who do you think?
I think it's going to be the Braves.
Okay.
But the Nationals are still around there too. I mean,
Sure. All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up for the show today. We're going to wrap it up now. You can catch us on social media. It's STP on Twitter. You can also catch us on Facebook and YouTube, lasalle.edu/LaSalleTV and Sports Talk Philly. We hope you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend, enjoy some March Madness, and we'll see you next week.